So apparently this isn't the video I planned to make. I'm still working on the intersex video as we speak, but apparently a lot of you liked my reaction video so much to the intersex issue that, to be honest with you, was probably about 5 years out of date, but it's still kind of relevant today, considering it's still going on, that a lot of you wanted me to react to more recent events. In particular, people were PMing me about the Ben Shapiro video in which he supposedly debunks the transgender ideology. Now, like I said, I'm not an expert on being transgender. I am transgender, but that doesn't automatically make me an expert. It does, to some people, automatically make me some form of educator, but I can only educate insofar as it affects me and insofar as how little I know about how it works. I know about dysphoria. I experience it every day. I've experienced it pretty much most of my life. I understand the medical procedures that go through it, but I also understand the rather ridiculous arguments conservatives make with regards to trying to stop it, with regards to transgender people in sports, with regards to children in sport, with regards to surgical medical intervention for children wanting to transition, which is pretty much the majority of my audience probably already knows is a ridiculous argument, as surgical transition in children tends not to happen unless, of course, you're born intersex. But like I said, I don't think Ben Shapiro even acknowledges that people like me exist. But anyway, I digress. This is the first time I've actually sat down and listened to Ben Shapiro in his entire bullshit entirety. And I'm not quite looking forward to it. This is 11 minutes long. And that's roughly about 11 minutes. I would say that's about 10 minutes and 59 seconds too long for me to be able to bear. But anyway, let's just get this over and done with, shall we? Let's see what he has to say.
You are about to watch an episode of my awesome new series, Debunked.
I doubt there's anything particularly awesome about this, but have you noticed how unexcited he actually looks? His eyebrows are constantly angry. They're kind of like this in this Klingon frown, which kind of insults Klingons, because at least Klingons have... yeah, I know. At least Klingons have at least some decency. At least they have some honor about them. But this guy just looks constantly like he's angry with something, and that's what I've noticed about most conservatives. So, in regards to their extremist stances, have you noticed how angry they always are? How they have to continuously shout at the microphone or something like that, or shout at the camera. I could go on about this guy's looks all I like, because at the end of the day, he's going to go on about how I look. People like him are constantly going to go on about whether I look like a woman or not. Yeah, I know. I agree. I'm putting myself for it, aren't I? Yeah. Anyway, Trouble here seems to agree with me. So let's see what Ben has to say.
I do say so myself. Seriously, we are very proud of this show. Every episode, I dismantle and debunk a common leftist myth in 15 minutes or less. If you like.
And then leftists come along and debunk the debunking. It's kind of laughable how this guy continues to do his show. But then again, we are dealing with a section of people who literally believe QAnon when they said that Donald Trump had a bunker below the bunker of the White House, and saying he's still in power. So I guess that's the kind of mentality we're dealing with.
Like what you see, head on over to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use promo code DEBUNK for 20% off. Become a member today, because you can watch the entire first season right this instant. That is.
Or you could just BitTorrent it. I know I shouldn't be encouraging that, but at the end of the day, the guy's rich enough as it is, so if that's what you want to do, or you can watch it on YouTube, like I'm doing right now.
Correct. You can binge the entire first season right now on the Daily Wire. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use promo code DEBUNKED for 20% off. Enjoy this sneak peek.
It's a sneak peek, by the way. Yeah, so we'll give him that. It's a sneak peek. It's a sneak peek. And if you're mentally ascribed to that kind of mentality, please, by all means, pay him so that he can tell you more bullshit that you want to believe for the rest of your life. Because I've tried. I've literally tried. I've had conversations with you guys on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitter. There's no changing your minds. Even when science and facts is thrown your way, you'll still buy into this bullshit, and he knows it. He knows it.
Today on Debunked, we're going to discuss a very common question. Can a man be a woman?
Actually, that's not the question transgender people ask themselves. It's a question of how do we define a woman? How do we define a man? That's the question we tend to ask a lot of ourselves. It's not a matter of whether we can physically become a woman. Okay, whether we can biologically become a woman is probably the question that he thinks that we're asking. We're not. We really aren't. We know the difference between biology and gender.
Dr. Levine, do you believe that minors are capable of making such a life-changing decision as changing one's sex?
Oh, this is clever. You see how he starts off with the false narrative here, where he's literally going after minors at this point. He literally asks the question: should minors go through, should be allowed to go through surgical transformation when it comes to becoming, to being transgender, which doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. But Ben Shapiro goes with this narrative. He starts with this narrative because he's going for the age-old "think about the children" argument. And to be fair, Dr. Levine doesn't really answer the question. The answer to the question is no. We don't do invasive surgical interference on children if they identify as transgender. However, what they don't remember is that they actually do. They did it to me. They do it to other children who are born with both genitals. They do it on a regular basis. But the intersex community is invisible as far as that's concerned. But they don't do it on children who identify as transgender because they know that children at that particular age are at a, what's the word I'm thinking of? A very impressionable age, and they need to know their identity. They need to get to know their identity before they make an irreversible decision, which doesn't stop them from making irreversible decisions on the intersex community. And yes, I will harp on about that because it's very important to me.
Well, Senator, thank you for your interest in this question. Transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field.
The specific question was about minors. Let's be a little more specific since you evaded the question.
Which, to be fair, she did. I'll grant him that. She did evade the question, which had a very obvious answer to it. It doesn't happen. That's all she needed to say. That does not happen.
Do you support the government intervening to override the parent's consent to give a child puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and/or amputation surgery of breasts and genitalia?
Senator, transgender medicine is a very complex...
The answer, clearly, is yes, as Levine even told a former Trump administration official. Just pause on that for a moment and think about how crazy that is.
I am thinking about how crazy that is. I'm actually thinking about how crazy your answer is. Like I said, it doesn't happen. And the fact that Ben Shapiro doesn't touch on that shows exactly how disingenuous his approach actually is to this entire topic. Oh, dear God. Oh, dear God. Dear God. I'm already getting an aneurysm just thinking about it. Just dealing with it. So. Oh. The music.
Now, in the past few years, you've heard a lot of statements that sound like we must not raise boys as boys and girls as girls because we just can't be sure that kids actually have the sex assigned to them at birth.
Wrong. Yet again. They do have the sex assigned to them at birth. There is a difference between biological sex and identity and gender identity. One is biological, one is a social construct. That is the science. I was born, if I was born with a PP, and nothing else, and the normal chromosomes that come with that, I would be biologically a man. There's no getting around that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that gender-wise I am a man. It doesn't work like that. And I love how you open up your little video montage there with surgical implements, like it's some kind of threatening thing to our children, which again, like I said, just doesn't happen unless you're intersex.
You've heard that some people are men in women's bodies or women in men's bodies. You may even have heard that if you're a straight dude and you don't want to have sex with a trans woman, meaning a biological male, this makes you gay.
Yeah, only from people like you. Only from people like you. That's all I've ever heard this from. People who want to have sex with, people who have sex with transgender women must be gay. Okay. I've only heard that argument from people like you. I've never heard that from people on the left or people who are in support of transgenderism or people in the LGBTQ community. I've never heard that once coming from them. Never.
All of this is insane patent nonsense.
I'm glad we agree. I am so glad we agree. Really, I am so fucking glad we agree. Oh my God, the two sexes. Oh my God. This really does affect the intersex community. Oh, Jesus Christ. He's reading my mind.
Males and females reproduce with one another in the human species. We've known this for quite a while. The simple reality is that the human species is sexually dimorphic.
Oh, he literally went there. He literally went there. He literally that image he just posted of the woman being kissed after the end of World War II is actually now demonstrified as non-consent, and he uses it as something to be proud of. He uses it as something to say, hey, this is what it means to be a man. This is what it means to be a woman. Women must know their... Jesus, he really went there. And lions. Oh my God. The most common argument for the homosexual condition lies with gay lions. I'm so glad he showed this one. I don't think that Ben Shapiro can appreciate the utter irony of what he just posted here.
Sex is binary. We
No.
come in two brands.
No, sex is not binary. It's no longer binary. It is a rainbow. It always has been. There are as many intersex people out there who cannot be defined as either male or female in their entirety. It's a rainbow. There is almost as many intersex people out there as there are redheads. And I dare say, Ben, you know a fair few redheads.
And female. Typically, those who have the XY chromosomes are male. Those who have XX chromosomes are female.
Typically. Just remember that word. Typically. Ben Shapiro used it, not me. Typically.
Males and females differ. They differ in size and shape, in musculature, brain function. As neuroscientist Steven Pinker says, differences between the sexes are part of the human condition.
Again, he's talking fucking biology. He is not talking genderism. We're already 2.5 minutes into this little preview here, and so far he's not debunked anything. If anything, he's more or less strengthened the argument that that he has no idea what he's talking about. He's talking about biology here, and not one transgender person I know is arguing against the fucking biology. He's really focusing on the kids issue here, isn't he? Do you think there's some underlying metaphor here that we're missing?
There are certainly people who have anomalous genetic conditions, like Klinefelter syndrome. in which a person has two X chromosomes and a Y chromosome, and in whom breast development looks female while male genitalia are present.
Oh, here we go. We're going to go into a misunderstanding here. We really are. This is... oh, God.
Overall, disorders of sexual development affect 1 in every 5,000 births.
No. No.
Now, the presence of abnormal development does not mean that sex is a spectrum. To suggest otherwise, it would be the same thing as saying that because one child every few thousand is born with 3 toes, this means that the number of toes in the human being is a spectrum.
What? So basically what you're saying is that a mutation is the same as something that is a rare condition or a rare condition at birth. And let me tell you something. People who are intersex do not claim to be a mutation. The medical profession no longer claims it to be a mutation. It doesn't claim it, the medical profession has issues with the intersex condition, but it's not the same as what you're describing here. That is ridiculous. In fact, what you're actually trying to point out here, which I hear a lot of people saying, is that the intersex argument doesn't prove transgenderism. And you're right. Intersex, on a biological level, has nothing to do with transgenderism. It has nothing to do with being transgender. There are lots of people who are intersex will go out in the rest of their life not really caring if they are one biological sex or the other biological sex, or if they have extra parts, if they're a man with extra genital parts, or a woman with extra genitalia or whatever. They just go on in their life absolutely normal. To literally, there are issues with the intersex community that do kind of like mix in with the transgender community, because there are issues that intertwine like that. Just like that's why the LGBTQI community merge together so well, because there's an overlap there. But you can't use intersex as an argument for or against the transgender condition. That's not what this is about. Again, he's using biology to argue against the transgender issue, to argue against gender, and the two do not equate.
Or that a person with 3 toes might actually be a sloth human, a 3-toed sloth human. All reproduction is rooted in the presence of sexual dimorphism. To pretend otherwise is biologically nonsensical.
I agree. It's procreation is binary. I can't see a way of getting around it unless you're a clone. You still need sperm to fertilize an egg. That doesn't prove his point. If your argument is basically transgenderism doesn't exist because men and women, need to make babies together. What? So your argument is that if you become a man, you don't have a right to become pregnant. If a woman becomes a man, if a woman transgenders female to male, she automatically loses the right to become pregnant based on her identity. That's what you're arguing here, which is, again, makes no sense to me. It's an argument that makes absolutely no sense.
That's why, to end a conversation on transgenderism, just ask for a simple, non-self-referential definition of the terms man and woman.
No. Again, your argument, so basically the whole crux of the first 3.5 minutes of this video is you saying men can't become women and women can't become men, transgender into men because people mate, because people make babies. That's your argument. That's how this works. God, I knew you were stupid, but I didn't know you were this stupid.
When I say non-self-referential, I mean you can't say, I feel like a woman, therefore I am a woman.
Why? Why? Nothing. Nothing. Your previous arguments don't add up to this argument. Again, you're talking biology. You're not talking. You're talking sex. You're not talking gender here. What you've just said has absolutely no bearing on what a person feels their gender is and how a person identifies. It has absolutely no bearing on that. Biological sex, fucking, does not determine your gender. Who you fuck does not determine your gender. Oh my god. Oh my god. I can't believe... I'm really grateful for this one. I'm going to do more of this.
For advocates of biology, the answer for what is woman or what is man is simple. You can look at chromosomes, SRY genes, reproductive systems, verifiable answers to the question. For advocates of the position that some biological men are women, or vice versa, there is no standard that can be applied.
Well, if science actually agreed with you, yeah, you're probably right, but it really doesn't. Like you said, you're using biology. You're using biology. Oh, Jesus Christ, this actually hurts.
A man can become a woman or a woman a man at any time without any stable definition of man or woman whatsoever.
Good. Yeah.
So according to our pseudo-medical activists, gender identity is complete.
Did you notice that? Let me show you again. Oh my god. Yeah, here we are. Did you notice what he did there? He hides her face. He hides the good doctor's face behind the mask, behind the medical mask. Underlying messages right there. It's almost like she needs to hide her face, or she's telling her that she must be ostracized, and this is the way we ostracize her because, hey, I'm Ben Shapiro. I didn't believe that the coronavirus was a thing. I don't believe that wearing a mask was a thing. Look at this madwoman. She's hiding her face. She's hiding her transgender face behind the mask. At least the mask is good for one thing, eh? Jesus Christ. It's kind of, I can say this. It's on the nose. My nose is big enough. My nose is well defined enough to know what's on the nose. Just remember the nose. The nose knows, okay?
So according to our pseudo-medical activists, gender identity is
pseudo-medical activist. The good doctor there is not pseudo-medical. She is quite literally the deputy head of the health department. That is not pseudo. That is real. It's ironic that we're actually listening to a pseudo expert arguing against the actual expert.
completely separate from sex. The separation between gender and sex relies on a simple fallacy. That
gender is entirely socially constructed. Ben, you just opened up with the argument that gender was socially constructed. You literally said that we're arguing against men being taught how to be men and women being taught how to be women. That was your argument. That was your entire that was where you started out on the subject of gender, the only thing that actually made sense, which was actually wrong. That was your argument. And now you're saying that your argument is a fallacy.
That gender is entirely socially constructed and thus separate from biology.
Yes, it is.
Gender, in this iteration, would be all the various feminine qualities that adhere to womanhood.
No.
The masculine qualities that adhere to being a male.
You really have a thing against female bodybuilders, don't you? I think that's what this is really about. Scrawny Ben Shapiro really doesn't like how unfeminine female bodybuilders are. That's what this is. That's what this is.
According to these folks, gender and sex are completely different.
Yeah, they are.
All of those gendered notions of femininity, they're completely separate from being a biological female.
Well, I would like you to show me where in the DNA pool it shows me that, that as a woman, I need to wear a dress, or as a man, I need to, be strong, masculine, and totally unfeeling about everybody else out there. I want you to show me this genetic pool that says that, that tells us that men shouldn't play with dolls, that boys shouldn't play with dolls, and girls shouldn't play soldier. Please, I would love to know the genetics in this. I would love to know the DNA in this. Because I'll bet you, if we're at this entire video, you can't show me one biological piece of evidence that suggests that femininity and masculinity have anything to do with biology.
This Cartesian notion that you can be a woman in a man's body, a soul in the machine.
Actually, using Gigi, as an example in itself is actually pretty transphobic as well. Because Gigi isn't about a man who wanted to become a woman. It's about a man who used the system to be a woman. He wasn't, he was pretending to be a woman. He wasn't transgender. He wasn't drag or anything like that. He was literally putting on his ideal of a socially constructed idea of how women behave. Socially constructed. Effective anyway, using Gigi is just kind of like debunks your argument, Ben.
Because your gender is separate from your sex is utterly unsupportable at any level.
Like I said, show me the biological, show me the DNA, show me the genetic structure that actually defines femininity and masculinity. I want to see that. I want to see the very genes, I want to see the very programming, the very code that tells me that a woman should only play with dolls. I want to see that genetic code.
Everyone understands there are some attributes that are generally considered more masculine. Chopping wood. Being dumb.
I'm whizzing with the door open, and I love it!
And some that are considered more feminine.
Again, socially constructed ideas. The only reason we think... Oh my God, looking at that face. The only reason we think this is because it's been ingrained in us sociologically for so long. In fact, in nature, the female of the species tends to be the most dominant. We have the queens of the hive. Spider females eat their mates when they're done. The only species in the entire world where men are the dominant gender, the dominant sex, is ours, because we made it that way. And I think Werewolf the Apocalypse literally pointed it out with the Black Fury book. As soon as men found out that it was their seed that was making women pregnant, that was when women became property. That was when women became prizes. That was when women were told to know their place.
Being caring, being nice, right? These are distinctions that do appear in virtually all cultures.
That explains why you are uncaring and unnice. Because you want to be a man so much, you have to be cruel and disingenuous about it.
Some of that is undoubtedly biologically oriented, and some is undoubtedly social construction. But
then it's not a fallacy, is it?
it is simply ridiculous to suggest that if a boy is effeminate, he's actually a girl. Or that if a...
That is not what they're saying. That is not what any transgender person is bloody well saying. Not one person is saying that just because a man behaves effeminate, they are automatically a woman. Not one person is saying that. Tell you who is saying that. Conservatives. Be a man. Is that not your mantra?
If a girl is masculine, she might actually be a boy.
No.
But this is what gender theorists argue.
No, it's not.
The origins of the gender identity movement lie with a professor of medical psychology at Johns Hopkins in the 1960s. His name was John Money.
Oh.
After twin boys were born, and after a botched circumcision destroyed one boy's penis, that boy was raised as a girl. By the time that boy was a teenager, the boy felt extraordinary discomfort because he was biologically male, and his parents told him the truth. Both twins ended up killing themselves in their mid-30s.
So now you're arguing against transgenderism because the parents refuse to accept that their kids might suffer from dysphoria in the 1960s. The 1960s, where information about being transgender wasn't even a thing. If these parents were stupid enough to decide that their kids were who they thought they should be based on whether they had genitalia or not, doesn't prove your argument. Transgenderism has absolutely nothing to do with the idiocy of parenting.
That didn't stop John Money from founding the Johns Hopkins Gender Identity Clinic in 1965. His theory was children could identify as members of the opposite sex, and that radical surgery was the proper solution. That inside, these kids were members of the opposite sex in reality, and that surgery would merely make their bodies align with their identity.
Actually, I'm going to have to really research this one so that I understand what's going on. But I believe that basically that was another intersex thing where it was actually common practice to do surgery on children whose sexual identity biologically was indeterminable. Like what I said in the previous video when that doctor said how do you describe that to a parent. So, but I'm not going to claim to be any expert on this, except to say that I think Ben Shapiro is kind of misinterpreting the evidence on what is already a disturbing story.
Money claims that, quote, the gender identity gate is open at birth for a normal child, no less than for one born with unfinished sex organs, and would stay that way for at least a year.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. It was an intersex thing. He's kind of misusing an already terrible argument to emphasize his already terrible argument.
So in other words, you could have a full biological boy with finished sex organs, and his gender identity was still open. Brains and bodies were considered in direct opposition, completely separate from one another. Radical feminists like Judith Butler began arguing that all gender was socially constructed, and that therefore all inequalities in outcome between men and women could be laid at the feet of an evil, sexist society. If gender is a meaningless social construct created by society, why does it matter more than sex, which is actual real biology?
Because we live in a society where social constructs matter. That's why, in the greater scheme of things, we have created systems where social constructs actually matter. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. That kind of concept. You have a place in society. I have, being rich. I have a place in society, being poor. We live in a society where we have been constantly told to know our place. And that has nothing to do with biology. It has to do with how fortunate you were born or how successful you were or whatever. That is absolutely nothing to do with biology.
And why is gender more real than biology itself? Why
Nobody's saying it's more real than biology.
would anyone need to change his or her body in order to align with gender?
Gee, I don't know. Maybe to prevent 47% of deaths in people who already suffer from dysphoria. Maybe that's a good reason. Maybe that is a very good reason why we should take their thoughts into consideration.
A social construction, when gender and sex are completely separate in the first place. Gender dysphoria, which is what we're talking about here, is a serious and tragic disorder. It is also extremely rare. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5th edition, those who had received a diagnosis of gender identity disorder or transsexualism and were seeking hormone treatment and or surgery represented just 0.005 to 0.014% for males and 0.002 to 0.003% for females. Those stats are now rising dramatically.
We have that big announcement.
The rising. You want to know why these stats are rising dramatically? It's because we're being more open about who we are. Beforehand, it was very difficult to, for transgender, for people to come out, for even gay people to come out. It's okay. It's like J.K. Rowling says. The rise of people wanting to transition has been on the up and up. And to be fair, she's right. To be fair, she's absolutely right. Is this a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing. If anything, it shows that there is a positive going on out there, that there is more information available out there. I'm sorry, but way back in 2013, that was 7 years ago. How many trans people on the internet do you actually know? How many trans people on YouTube do you actually know of in 2013? The only person that I can come up with at the time is Ziana. And at the time, they didn't even identify as transgender. I wonder why. Just think about that. I wonder why.
From an Oscar-nominated actor announcing he is transgender. Elliot Page came out publicly with a post about his identity.
And in that post, now liked nearly 2.5 million times. The more I hold myself close and fully embrace who I am, the more I dream, the more my heart grows, and the more I thrive. And guys, that's what we love to see.
Yes.
Happy. Wow. Ben Shapiro has a problem with people being happy. That's what this is. That's all this is. It's not because transgenderism is a threat to society. He's not actually said that. He's not actually said that being transgender is a threat to society. The worst argument he's actually made, probably the best argument he's actually made, is that men and women fuck and make babies. But like I already pointed out, you don't necessarily have to identify as a woman to get pregnant. You don't. You can be non-binary, still have kids. You could be a female to male trans man and still have kids. That's the only argument he's made against transgenderism that actually is close to working but still fails.
He is going to help so many. Janae, thank you so much.
People suffering from gender dysphoria, which, in its non-politicized definition, means the persistent belief that you are a member of the opposite sex, have a tragically high suicidal ideation and...
It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that that we believe that we're the opposite sex. We look at ourselves and we don't identify as the person that we think we are, that we've known we are for so long. We look at ourselves in the mirror and we don't see ourselves. We see what society has defined us. A lot of my physical traits were deliberately constructed and designed by what society thought I should look like. I was literally beaten for walking like a woman when I should be walking like a man. A lot of my physical traits are a result of the amount of testosterone that was put in me before puberty. So yeah, that dysphoria is real. That dysphoria actually is very, very real to a lot of people out there and should be respected as such. It is not as simple as Ben Shapiro likes to describe it to his idiotic audience.
Depression rate. That suicidal ideation rate remains tragically high after surgical and hormonal treatment. Longitudinal studies that are good just do not exist on the efficacy of these measures. And the mental health problems associated with gender dysphoria remain extremely damaging, even in particularly accepting societies. But suffering from a mental disorder does not change your underlying sex, any more than believing that you are Napoleon Bonaparte makes you Napoleon Bonaparte.
Gender dysphoria is not described as a mental disorder. Or probably it's kind of very confusing, how it's presented. Gender dysphoria is the cause of many mental disorders, especially if it remains untreated, which is what Ben Shapiro is. In fact, the sad thing about this entire video is that Ben Shapiro is so concerned about how society perceives men and women, and about how biology perceives the male, the male and female bipartisanship, that he's willing to sacrifice lives in order to make that point. He's willing to sacrifice happiness to get society the way he wants it to be. And that's sad. That is just... How much is a cup of decency in your life, Ben? That's what I would really like to know. How hard would it be just to respect, just to be decent to other people? And I'll say this before I go on. I don't care if being gay, being trans, or whatever is biological or not. Even if it was just a choice, it still doesn't matter. It doesn't affect you or society in the grand scheme of things, and it certainly doesn't affect fucking. It really doesn't.
Transgender activists make an objective claim about reality based on subjective internal feelings. That's unsustainable. What's more, transgender activists...
I would say that the medical degree, the medical society would tend to disagree. I would say that 47% of people suffering from dysphoria committing suicide might disagree with you there. Might disagree with you as to how sustainable it is. There are a lot of trans people out there who go through, who go through their transition and find their lives to be extremely sustainable. Doesn't affect their lives, doesn't affect their jobs. The only thing in their lives that's affected by it is from people like you, who want to get them fired, who don't want them to take part in society, who don't want them to take government positions or to play sports when they're kids.
Demand that you abandon reason, biology, privacy, even the ability to raise your kids in concert with reality in favor of a delusional quasi-religious worldview in which gender and sex are completely segregated and a boy can be a girl and a girl a boy.
This coming from the guy who quite literally argues that the Christian faith is real. We have to. He's arguing for a society that literally defines our identity as men and women based on quasi-religious ideology. The hypocrisy here is just ridiculous.
Now, none of this means that anybody suffering from gender dysphoria ought to be mistreated. Anybody with any sort of disorder ought...
You're already doing it. Through this very show alone, you're already doing that.
...ought to be treated with nothing but sympathy and care. But this does mean that a...
I like that. They must be treated with sympathy and care, but we must not respect their choices in any way. I bet that's what he's about to say.
Society that seeks to propagandize to children that they can switch their gender is both lying to kids and doing them psychological harm in the process.
Why? Why is telling kids that these things happen going to destroy their lives? It's like that book that was being sold about... it was in the kids section, and the Conservatives decided they were going to boycott the bookshops because it was basically talking about a gay kid. No sex in it at all, just talking about a gay kid. That's basically, that was basically it, because apparently it's psychologically damaging them. You know what was more psychologically damaging to me when it came to the gay, when it came to gays? Finding out at 21 that being gay was actually a thing. What do you think about that? 21. That was more psychologically damaging to me.
Unfortunately, that's exactly what our society is now teaching kids in public schools.
No.
Anti-biological nonsense.
Show me the class where they're teaching this. Show me the class where they're literally teaching, hey, if you identify as a boy, you can be a boy. I want to see this class. I want to know this class. I want to see this class on video, on film. I want to see this. I want to see this. I know of classes that literally say, if you identify as a boy, I will respect that. If you identify as a girl, I'll respect that. But I don't see classes saying, hey, you can be whatever sex or gender you want to be. There is no class in the entire world that literally teaches that. None. Not one. And I bet you Ben Shapiro doesn't show this.
Including the lie that you might just be a different gender with different pronouns. And it's not just that. With the new equality...
No, he didn't. He didn't show the classes. He didn't show any evidence to back his claim up.
The motion is adopted.
The Biden administration and the Democratic Party are seeking to promote the idea that any institution that doesn't mimic these lies has to be destroyed.
No. No. Do you actually have the policy? I'd like to see this policy. You say they're doing this, but you haven't presented the evidence to show that they're doing this. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I knew this was going to be painful when I started. And it's only an 11-minute video, and I've been at this for 45 minutes. There's just a lot to unpack here. It really is.
Religious institutions are not exempted from federal regulations that demand that men who identify as women be treated as women. And this is true.
That's all they're asking for. That's all they're demanding. And they have every right to do that. They have every bloody right to do that. And if you don't respect that, then you should be shamed. You should be penalized for penalizing. You should be penalized for being a git.
In sports, in restrooms. Ironically, feminists who sought to protect women from men have now seen female spaces completely destroyed because they can't define female and male properly.
This is a totally different argument at the end of the day. I'm still trying to figure out where they come from this. Where they come from. The only argument I hear is basically J.K. Rowling's argument that only women menstruate. Which kind of puts me in a very awkward position, doesn't it?
Shockingly, we're now a society that demands that parents hand over their kids to the tender mercies of political actors masquerading as medical specialists. If you have a 12-year-old at school with a headache, the school nurse cannot prescribe to them Tylenol without calling you first. But
as opposed to an entire state cutting off, doing surgery, cutting off a intersex boy's penis, for want of a better word, in order for them to identify as a girl. And later on, this kid said, "I feel like a boy." The state did that. The state did genetic mutilation to this kid at the age of 1. South Carolina. It's in my last video, Ben. It's actually literally in my last video. The government does this. And that was a Republican government, I might add.
we now have officials in states and in the federal government suggesting that if a 12-year-old says that she is a boy, the school should be able to prescribe puberty blockers without calling a parent.
No, 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 no. No, they don't. They don't. This is not a policy, ladies and gentlemen. Medical intervention on a child without the parents' consent under any circumstances is not a policy that the government is putting forward. It is not. This is an absolute lie.
That is a sick society.
The sickness comes from you literally lying about a policy that doesn't exist. Basically, everything you have done is, you haven't debunked anything. All you've done is just basically put across an agenda built on lies. You opened up with an argument that doesn't happen, and now you're closing with an argument that isn't happening.
In the end, a man claiming to be a woman is making an unsustainable claim. He can't even know.
Like I said, prove it. Prove it. You haven't said anything in this video that literally makes that claim. The only claim you're saying, oh, it's unsubstantiated. is all you've said, but nothing in this entire presentation has actually argued that point, has actually made that point. You've only just said those are just words coming out of your mouth that have nothing to do with what you have said in the last 10 fucking minutes.
What it is like to be a woman because he is not one. A man with surgeries and hormone treatment does not become a woman, nor does a man who simply declares himself a woman. All of this is insane propaganda and is being propagated for political purposes. So,
he says working for a system that makes up bullshit propaganda for political purposes. Just saying. He does literally come out as a conservative mouthpiece. Is that not political?
no, a man cannot become a woman or a woman a man.
That's it. That was his entire debunking of the transgender ideology. Literally arguments that had absolutely very little or nothing to do with transgender ideology whatsoever. That's basically all he did. He opened, the irony is that he opens up with the fact that the gender the gender identity is a social construct, then says it's a fallacy, then says it's a fallacy, and then claims that these things, then claims that it's not a fallacy. I've never, the whiplash I've had from this video, I'm quite literally surprised that I still have a neck. I think I'm doing exorcist neck turns right now, just thinking about his, his logic. There, it just doesn't, wow. Nothing in this video says anything to back him up. Nothing. He has debunked absolutely nothing. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the suggestion. Now I'm going to have a migraine to last me for the rest of my life. If you have anything else you'd like me to take a look at, let me know, because I've got nothing else better to do, I suppose. Until next time. Mwah.